Hey everybody, this is Lynn from A Bit of Birdsong. I wanted to share a journal spread. It's a couple of pages that are going into a journal, a custom journal that I've been working on. And I just wanted to drop in and show you this page that has just touched my heart so much. It has been a couple of days process just learning more and more about Rembrandt and his wife Saskia. I've always been struck by the realism in Rembrandt's paintings. He has paintings that are very graphic. Some of them are morbid in their content. He captures emotion, different facial expressions, and just rooms. You can feel the surroundings of the people in the paintings like no other painter. And when you look at his work over time, you get to where you can recognize his work. It has a real depth to it that nothing else has, and no wonder his paintings are so expensive and so valued. Although, as many other artists, he died a pauper, and his work had declined rapidly in popularity by the end of his life. Jason and I heard recently in the news that the possibility that another one or two Rembrandt paintings have been found. He was very prolific, and his signature on his paintings changed a little bit over time. Anyway, I became very fascinated with Rembrandt's wife, Saskia. And this page is called Saskia, this entire spread. It is about the object of Rembrandt's affection for quite a few years, although it was really a short number of years if you look at the magnitude of their love and really the time that they lived in. It was a miracle to live past 30-some years old. So let me explain this page. It all started with this beautiful postcard of Saskia. She is dressed up in a pastoral setting as Flora, and she looks very gentle, very peaceful. The dress is beautiful. One article referred to this as an Arcadian costume. I have that book that I showed you recently entitled What People Wore When, and I looked back through the fashion. Saskia was born in Friesland, which is in the Netherlands, and looking at the time that she was alive for the fashion, I don't really see this jump out at me. I do see some French influence. Perhaps this is really Dutch as well, but I was just looking at the neckline and the lack of maybe a head covering. At any rate, it's a beautiful garment. We have these voluptuous sleeves and all of this billowy fabric, the beautiful colors. So let me close this and just real quickly say Saskia was from an important family. Her father was a mayor in Friesland, and Rembrandt was reaching the height of his popularity. He had just started to be noticed, and his popularity would climb over the next couple of decades. Saskia was apparently a very spirited girl. She probably had marriage proposals that she turned down. She was left an orphan by the time she was 12. Her father died when she was 12. Her mother had already died when she was 7. So she was raised by family. I believe there were about 8 children in the family. She did not accept any proposals, however. Articles about her say she was studious and that she was very headstrong, and she had the ability to travel some with family where they would look at art and purchase art, and I believe that's probably how she ended up meeting Rembrandt. They fell in love. Rembrandt wanted to marry her. Her family was opposed because she had money and she had stature, and they were afraid that that would all be squandered on Rembrandt. Anyway, she pushed really hard for this marriage, and it did take place. So, in describing this spread, she did not live very long. Let me go ahead and tell you about this little flip page right here. On the outside, I've got Rembrandt was a painter during the Dutch Golden Age. I have this large book, The Age of Rembrandt and Vermeer is another really common name. Dutch arts were really popular during the time of the Dutch Golden Age. They were considered the finest, the best, and you have several painters that came out of that time frame during the late 1500s through the 1600s. So Rembrandt did a lot of paintings. Saskia was in many, many paintings. Getting over here to what I wanted to show you, I did a little chart just around this very small group of people that lived during the time that Rembrandt and Saskia were married and then beyond. Saskia had 4 children. There's a 0, 0, 0. The first 3 children died either when they were born or only a day or two after. She finally had a 4th child named Titus, and this is little Titus over here, painted by Rembrandt, and Titus was a family name. It was altered a bit from a female name in her family. After she died, she left Titus as a little baby. Rembrandt hired a wet nurse to take care of the baby, and they became involved, but I think it was a tumultuous kind of, I didn't even put her picture in here. Her initial is here, G. Her name started with a G. She caused a lot of trouble for Rembrandt. I believe she loved him and she expected him to marry her, and that did not happen. He hired a housemaid. Her name was Hendrinke. I think I'm saying that right, Hendrinke. And he fell in love with her and would have married her, except that he was still receiving money from the estate of Saskia. And that estate stipulated that he could not marry again. After Titus was born, he was expected to have that money for himself and for Titus. At any rate, this lady caused him a lot of trouble, the one who had been hired to be a wet nurse. She brought suits against him to get money from him, and for a while he actually pursued and was successful at having her committed to sort of a mental institution. So I want to not make this too long. It is such an interesting story. All of this is so interesting, and it gives me so much more appreciation of Rembrandt and the work that he did. Lives were very short. That people did not live. Very often they didn't survive infancy. If they did, there were so many diseases and so many accidents, and there was war, there was hunger. Titus only lived to be 26, and the year after he died, he also lost his wife. Well, he was already gone. I should word it in a different way. His wife died, his mother-in-law died, and Rembrandt died. Rembrandt lived to be 63, which was considered elderly. So I've got this image here of the raven, and the raven, if it lands in sight, or, in some cultures, it can be an omen of death. So I just put that there. There was so much death within this. She lost her parents young. She died young. She lost 3 babies. Her one child only survived to age 26, and he left behind a small child. I didn't follow the family much beyond that. It's really interesting to me that Saskia died on the birthday of one of my sons, and then Hendrinke died on the birthday of my daughter. Don't know that that means anything at all, but that did jump out at me. So there are some other areas of symbolism in this spread. This is a piece of satin, and I know that Saskia was often dressed very, very ornately in costume, and it has been wondered by art critics through the years, through the ages, if that was done as a show to show how happy they were and how successful they were, even to maybe convince her family that they were happy. Other things would be that she came from a fine family and that she did dress very nicely. In the center here is a charm that I purchased just in some old jewelry, and, well, not super old. Broken jewelry is more like it. I noticed these charms. This is Saint Benedict. And so I took this charm off, and Saint Benedict would have been a Christian symbol to ward off. I believe people used emblems and thoughts of Saint Benedict, prayers to Saint Benedict, to ward off danger. And then I went ahead and glued inside and covered with a layer of acrylic this little image of Saskia and the beautiful hat. And that's just a beautiful, beautiful painting. You can see a lot of her facial qualities. She had kind of a double chin. It's a little endearing. That's not always considered something endearing, but she has a sweet face behind this vellum. And I did this because of just the ghostly look it gives. This is another image of Saskia. And it is said that Rembrandt was absolutely distraught after she died. He completely adored her. For years after she died, he would not touch oil paints. And then the tone of his artwork changed dramatically. The butterfly is here because butterflies don't live long after they hatch out. And I thought that was really some strong symbolism. This little piece of silk I put in because it matches the colors of her dress. I love all of these colors. And that's just tucked under there. This is to symbolize a grave, and that's one more part of this story that I want to share before I wrap this up. I don't want it to be too long. This is a broken metal clip that I found, and I just put it on here to symbolize brokenness or something being broken into. Rembrandt became so impoverished after she died, years after she died, that he had to sell her grave. And that sounds really harsh, but that was a common practice. In fact, Rembrandt was also buried in a pauper's grave, and the rule was that after 20 years, the graves could be opened and the bones could be sold, and the grave would be used again. So this is to be like a casket or a grave, and just I've put some pretty stitching here. There's pretty stitching over here. Am I leaving anything out of this spread? I've got my signature hidden under this little piece of burlap. I did use the burlap for two reasons. Because of the color just being from a very dark time in some ways, and also because it's rough. And I knew this was going to go under her photograph with this little area symbolizing her grave. I put the string on here to be like a marked grave to show that it was going to be sold. You know, I may break down and add some more to this before it's over, but these are some of the things I have right now. I've stamped here 1642, which is the year that Saskia died. I believe she did suffer from some illnesses, and think of the heartbreak of only making it to 29 and already having lost your mom and your dad and 3 children and siblings. So there was just a lot of loss, and I imagine life was very, very precious. And it was, you knew when you were born, you knew as you grew up that your chances of living past a certain age were not that great. One more thing I wanted to share. Her grave marker now is in a very large church in the Netherlands. And it's a floor of tombstone markers in this big church. The church is very, very old, and it was said that the church used to have an odor because as many as 12,000 bodies had been buried under the church. They would just sink the bodies lower and add to the top. And I believe that all the bodies have been removed and moved to different locations so that that's not so bad. But they do have markers now to mark the graves of certain people buried there. And Saskia does have a marker there now. So that's everything for this spread. I think I'm in love with this. I learned so much. I love Rembrandt so much more. And my heart just goes out to Saskia, 18, 19. we're going on almost 400 years since she died, and her life is still so real to so many people because of the way that she was portrayed in all of this love from Rembrandt. I think it's going to make me cry, but yeah, I really enjoyed doing this spread. And that's all for now. I'll see you next time. Bye.